Today I'm going to be taking a look at the RG CubeXX. Now I actually sat out on the original RG Cube. I didn't get one. And not because I thought it was necessarily a bad handheld, it's because it was running Android. Now I'm not trying to say that Android-based retro emulation handhelds are bad either, I just seem to have a preference towards the Linux-based ones. But I have noticed that there are some really good Android ones on the market now, and I'm probably going to start checking some of them out. But back to the RG CubeXX. What this handheld is, it's essentially the form factor of the original RG Cube, but with the internals of Anbernic's awesome XX product line, which means no Android and a more wallet-friendly price tag. How well does this version of the Cube stack up, and is it even worth getting? Let's take a closer look. Inside the box, you have the CubeXX itself, a little bit of paperwork, and a USB Type-C cable. Taking a closer look at the handheld, you have 4 face buttons, 2 joysticks. You actually have a 8-directional D-pad, which is a very interesting choice. You also have your menu button and start and select over there on the bottom. Now I really like that in this version of the Cube, they have the joysticks parallel to one another. The previous design wasn't bad, I just really like having the directional pad right across from the face buttons. Now under the hood, it's exactly what we've come to expect from Anbernic's XX product line so far this year, with the exception of course being its beautiful 1x1 display. I don't know how you guys feel about 1x1 handhelds. Initially I was a bit on the fence, but it seems like the ones that have been coming to the market recently have just been getting better and better. On the bottom you have the 2 micro SD card slots, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and 2 grills for the speakers. Topside you have 4 shoulder buttons, 2 of them in the quasi trigger like configuration. You have your power button, the volume up and down buttons, the USB Type-C port, a hard reset button, and HDMI output, which I really like to see on these things. Powering it up, we're greeted to an actual cleaner and more polished version of the Anbernic user interface that we've come to love. I know I've said it a lot, but I'm going to say it again. I really got to give Anbernic credit for how clean and organized they keep the user interface for this XX product line. And right away you can see how nice this 1x1 screen is. Now given its processing capabilities, we can expect it to run up to Sega Dreamcast comfortably while dabbling in PSP. This has pretty much been the trend with the XX product line for the entirety of this year, and this one's no different. I really like that it doesn't distort the image of whatever game you're playing to accommodate the 1x1 screen. Instead, depending on which console you're running, it'll put an overlay around it. It varies per emulator, and some of these are really cool. I especially like the Sega Dreamcast one because it looks exactly like this CRT that I had in 1999. I'm sure that style of TV was really common back then, but it still blew my mind seeing it. And speaking of Dreamcast, the performance was really good all around, and this 8-direction D-pad is really kick-ass for fighting games. Fun fact, my absolute favorite controller design when it comes to fighting games is the old Sega 6 button, and this 8-directional D-pad really gives me Genesis controller vibes. Switching over to PSP, there was no overlay bezel, but the performance was pretty solid. Like I said before, with these kind of specs, you can expect it to dabble in PSP. It's not going to give you the best performance, but it's definitely serviceable. I was pleasantly surprised to see DS emulation on here. This is something I feel having the 1x1 screen will be a huge benefit for. Being able to have both DS screens comfortably visible while playing whatever game. And with the push of a button, you can pick which DS display you want to be full screen, or change the configuration and layout of the dual screens. It had some really good arcade games bundled in, including a decent collection of vertical arcade titles. These are always fun and play surprisingly well with the 1x1 screen. One thing Anbernic has really gotten down packed with the XX product line is its N64 and PlayStation 1 emulation, and the CubeXX is among the best of them. Now I will admit the included library of games for the N64 and PlayStation 1 is a little more on the skimpy side than what we've seen with previous XX, but I completely understand in this instance they really want to focus on this handheld's strength. And in my opinion, the greatest strength of any of these 1x1 handhelds is playing some of the older handheld emulators. Playing Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance just looks absolutely incredible on this thing. Image quality is outstanding, and it feels like you're playing with an HD version of one of those old magnifiers that clip onto the back of the handhelds. And this principle carries over to the 8-bit and 16-bit emulators as well. They all look and play fantastic on here. So the Anbernic RG CubeXX. Guys, I have to say the 1x1 handhelds are still kind of a niche item at the moment. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but if that's something you're looking for and you're in the market for one, this is probably the best non-Android based one. Now would I recommend it over some of the other products in Anbernic's XX product line? That's really a tough call. All of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, but a 1x1 display is something that you kind of have to really want. But if 1x1 is something that you want, like I said before, this one is probably the best one out there right now. If you guys are interested in the Anbernic RG CubeXX, I'll put links in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.